Well, history would tell us that the one sport where Pacific nations have succeeded considerably at Commonwealth Games down the years is in weightlifting. There's a group of weightlifters who've been training here for some time now in Melbourne, in fact, under the auspices of Paul Coffer, one-time coach for the Australian national team, but he's been involved with the Oceania lifters for a good number of years now. And there's 3 or 4 of them who are certainly in contention, you would think, for possibly gold medals, although interestingly, one of the group, she used to be Fijian, Eileen Thikamatana, but had a row with the authorities in Fiji and now will be lifting under the Australian flag. So were she to lift a gold medal in the Commonwealth Games this time, it wouldn't be Fiji's, unlike the one that she won 4 years ago. But weightlifting for sure. I mean, the record tells us that they succeed in that sport. PNG, Samoa have a very strong weightlifting team, and historically Nauru, the smallest of nations with a population of less than 10,000, they've actually won more Commonwealth Games medals than any other Pacific country, all of them in weightlifting. There's the rugby sevens, where Fiji, as the double Olympic champions, will certainly be favourites, you would think, to win the men's event. But curiously, they've never won a Commonwealth Games gold medal, so it'll be a first for them if they manage to achieve that. There's a young Samoan team who could possibly surprise a few people. Tonga are also involved, but unlikely, I think, to be in the shake-up. And in the women's rugby sevens, you have the Fijiana, the Fijian women's team, who won a bronze medal at the Olympics last year. They too possibly could be in the shake-up, maybe alongside Australia and New Zealand. Beyond that, there's the beach volleyball. Vanuatu won a bronze medal in that sport last time. That was that country's second ever Commonwealth medal, because their first was actually won by a javelin thrower called Friana Quivera in the parasports. So we shouldn't overlook the parasports. They're part of the Commonwealth Games, and the Pacific Island nations have been putting a lot of time and effort into those sports. So maybe they might pick up a medal there. And the other thing I should mention, boxing. Certainly there's some very good Samoan boxers, including a silver medalist from 4 years ago. There may be more medals for the Pacific in the boxing ring.
Richard, you know, many Pacific nations suffered financially during COVID. Has Australia provided any support to help them prepare for the Commonwealth Games?
Australia has provided a significant amount of help to the Pacific Island nations for the Commonwealth Games, much as they did before the Olympic Games last year. There is a program called the GAPS program, which is run under the auspices of Griffith University in Queensland, and it does exactly that, essentially, fill in the gaps of the training regime of athletes in a whole range of sports. And then beyond that, in the weeks prior to the Games, a number of athletes have been over in various parts of Australia. A group of PNG athletes, for example, on the Gold Coast, the Vanuatu beach volleyball team, also on the Gold Coast. We have weightlifters in Gippsland in Victoria, boxers in Gippsland in Victoria, from all different countries, from places like Kiribati, from Tuvalu, from PNG, from Fiji as well. And all of these training camps, mainly under Australian coaches and using Australian expertise, have been funded by the Pacific Oz Sports Program, which in turn is funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. So Australia are doing their bit to try and help the Pacific Island nations, and particularly with the Victorian Games coming up in 2026, and then, of course, the Olympics in Brisbane in 2032. This is what they hope will be the start of a 10-year program to help the Pacific Islands really make an impact at those two games effectively on the Pacific's doorstep.
Yeah. You know, the Pacific nations often bring a lot of colour and quirkiness to the Games. What can we expect this time round?
Well, I guess when you talk about colourful and quirky, people's minds go back to Rio and Peter Tawhatufua, the Tongan, carrying the flag for his nation when he turned up in traditional dress, which basically, of course, involved him being topless and very well oiled, and a very fit young man. And he appeared on American talk shows and became a bit of an overnight celebrity. Now, last time round in Tokyo, he did it again. And a number of other countries followed suit. So that's becoming a bit old hat now to do the topless thing, and Peter Tawhatufua won't be in Birmingham. But in contrast, another quirky story, Dalton Tangalangi, who is the Premier of Niue. Niue is one of the tiniest of Pacific nations. It has a population of about 1,600. He's the leader of that country. He's also a bit of a lawn bowler, and this won't be his first trip to the Commonwealth Games. He's been twice before. in 2014 and 2018. He'll be there again this year, 2022, in the town of Leamington Spa, in fact, I believe, is where the bowls will be held, which is close to Birmingham, which, of course, is the host city in the heart of the English Midlands. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes, whether he'd be as entertaining, for example, as the Kiribati weightlifter who stole the show in Glasgow 2014, David Katoatau. I doubt it. So David Katoatau not only won a gold medal in weightlifting, but proved to be a rather snazzy dancer as well. And anybody who saw him perform that day will long remember what he did.
Yeah, indeed. Richard, lots to watch out for. We'll keep track of it all. Thanks so much.
No worries.